had to make that kick last year.
Absolutely. I agree.
Diggs catches that football.
Right.
When he went like this to Josh after that pass, I was like, I don't know what you're referring to being that close from being perfect, because that ball hit you in the back shoulder pad.
When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour. When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Score podcast. My name is Pat. Unfortunately, Tyler will not be joining me for this episode 35, where today we are going to be previewing the AFC East. NFL season right around the corner. We're dropping these division previews, division by division, throughout the week. And I got some guests popping on with me for each team. We're going through it. We're going Patriots. We're going Bills. We're going Dolphins. We're going Jets. I got guests for each team. I got questions. I got certain expectations, concerns for all those teams as well. We got a lot to talk about, and I'm excited. 3 teams really. It's funny in this division because, these last 20 years has just been, well, not so much recently, as we know, but before that, the division was dominated by Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots. And now in this new age, it's like it's those other 3 teams that feel worthy of winning this division and think it's their division to win. And they're in like their own tier. And then the Patriots are that team, new regime, new coaching staff. They draft Drake May at quarterback, guy I really liked going into the draft. I said it on this podcast. I thought he was the second best quarterback coming into the draft. I might look like an idiot after seeing what Jaden Daniels does, but that's how I felt about Drake May, and I still do. I like the tools that Drake May has. My questions, and I'm going to go through it with the New England guest, is the coaching staff, and it's like, do they have enough around this kid for him to succeed? Because there's not much around him. And then when you look at compared to the other 3 teams in the division, there's a lot of talent, a lot of weapons. You got superstars on all of those teams. So it's a new age in the AFC East. I'm excited to dive into it with all of these guests. So let's start out with those New England Patriots. Let's get these guys in here. Joining me now to talk about some New England Patriots, we got Dana and we got Mike. Fellas, how we doing?
Good.
Doing great, Pat.
Couple days till
Good to see you, boys.
season. Best
Yeah, we're
time of the
getting
year.
there, man. We are getting there. Can't wait. I want to talk about some New England Patriots. We're starting off this AFC East preview with you guys. Everybody's got to suck it up. They had to deal with you for 20 years, and now they're going to have to listen to you talk about your team first. So let's talk about this new regime, New England Patriots. Bill Belichick, first year not being there. You got a new coaching staff. Gerard Mayo gets promoted to head coach. Alex Van Pelt is the OC now. And then you got DeMarcus Covington as defensive coordinator. Besides that, players-wise, they bring in Jacoby Brissett as possibly that bridge quarterback. And then they draft Drake May, obviously, a guy I addressed in the intro. I really liked Drake May going into the draft. I thought he was the second best quarterback going into this draft. I liked him more than Jaden. People might call me crazy for that, but that's how I felt about Drake May. I really liked him watching him at North Carolina. They also bring in Antonio Gibson at running back, KJ Osborne at wide receiver, and then on top of losing the icon, Bill Belichick, additional losses for this team. Matthew Judon, they just traded him to Atlanta. So interested to see how that defense is going to look without him. I know he was banged up last year as well, though. And then they also lose Trent Brown, very underrated loss, I think, is losing Trent Brown, because when we look at that offensive line, that's really my first question for you guys. Cole Strange is starting the year injured. David Andrews is still there. But besides that, I mean, how are we feeling about the offensive line? To me, this is a concern for me.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it in the preseason games. Neither May or Brissett really had a lot of time to throw. Brissett ended up getting hurt, and the first drive of the preseason game against Commanders, I believe. So yeah, it is very sketchy. Some of these guys I've never heard of. There is a rookie that they brought in from Penn State, Caden Wallace. He's a left tackle, third round pick. Watched his college tape. He was pretty good. And he's coming from an elite program, so I'm hoping he can eventually start at some point.
David Andrews, he's their veteran. He's been there for a minute, and he's running the middle. They got the right tackle, Mike Onwu, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he's been there a few years. Just like the rest of the O-line, he's been banged up here and there.
Yeah.
They also have they have a young guy, I forget his name, City Sow.
Oh, the right guard.
Yep.
But Cole Strange, he was supposed to be the next guy, and he's been hurt more than half his career, so I have zero trust in him. But it's everyone's time to prove themselves.
That was like the most Bill Belichick draft pick, I think, in his whole regime as our coach, was Cole Strange out of, I think it was like Eastern, or it was like Tennessee at Chattanooga. Like, I would think Sean McVay said he didn't have him. I think he didn't have him earlier than the third round, and we draft him first round, 29th overall. It's just, if you go back in the years and look at the players they've passed on, it's insane how many players they passed on.
Look at the 2019 wide receiver draft class.
With it's like Debo and AJ.
N'Keal Harry over all those other guys who are top 10 receivers in the league right now.
Yep.
That was tough. I remember that.
AJ Brown cried when we didn't pick him. He was convinced that he was coming to us, and then last second we didn't take him, and yeah, it just came back to bite us in the ass. Look at us now. We don't have any weapons.
That's what I want to get into, boys. We're perfect transition here. I want to talk about, I mean, obviously the O-line, I brought it up as a concern, but the weapons are really a concern for me too. Like Ramondre Stevenson, he was banged up last year, but when he's been healthy, he's been a good back. But really it's the receiving core. Kendrick Bourne starts out the year out, but he's really that top guy in the room. Besides that, you're looking at Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, who they drafted in the second round this year. How's he looking? KJ Osborne, they brought in Tyquan Thornton, speed guy, but hasn't really been that reliable. Consistency hasn't been big for him. And then obviously they get Javon Baker in the draft this year as well.
Yeah.
Did you expect them to really make a push? I know they tried getting Ayuk and that didn't work out, but like, did they need something bad this offseason? Like, are you looking at, like, it could be tough for whoever's playing quarterback, these guys get out there?
I mean, I think that Polk will end up being our one at some point, because from what I've seen from him, he looks great, and he was only second fiddle to Rome Odunze in college at Washington, and they were sick. So I really think at some point Polk will be our number one. I mean, out of college, 69 catches, almost 1,200 yards. So, and he looks like he's uncoverable in preseason. I know it's just preseason, but I mean, he looks solid. Reminds me a lot of, I mean, and it sounds a little crazy, but he does remind me of Jamar Chase a lot, just like his routes, and he's got real strong hands, fast. I think he's going to be a complete receiver, so hopefully he will end up panning out.
Obviously, like you said, Kendrick Bourne, he's the heart and soul. He's the backbone. He's the guy. Obviously, being banged up. You have Demario Douglas, which I'd like to bring him up. He, from everything I've seen, Mind you, as Pat knows, huge Patriots fan. My family's whole Patriots fans. We go to training camp every year. We do all of it. Demario Douglas is a stud. Last year, they did not show him in preseason for a reason last year. If you go back to last year, he didn't play a lot. He's a speed guy. He can do it all. He's obviously small, but as a rookie in a shitty offense, he couldn't do anything last year. He had his flashes, but
And Mac Jones.
That's fact. Demario Douglas is my guy, and I have a feeling he's going to surprise a lot of people this year. I am very optimistic because I'm superstitious. That's all. But Demario Douglas, that's my guy. Jalen Polk, he looks good, everything I've seen, and I'm not a huge college football guy, so I don't really know much about that aspect, but everything I've seen, he looks great. Tyquan Thornton, he's in his third year. If he don't do nothing, he's done. KJ Osborne comes from a team where they have wide receivers. They know what they're doing, and we'll see what he can transition to this offense.
He was their 3, right, over in Minnesota.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just our typical story. Just a bunch of 3s and 4s who are trying to be 1s and 2s, and they're not. I do think Javon Baker though has like extreme potential to be very good. He led the Big 12 in receiving last year, and he was, what was it, second in the nation for yards per catch at 21.9. So he really does have that explosive play potential. So as long as we can get him the ball, I think he can definitely help. Thornton, I'm just done with. I really could care less if he's on the team anymore. I mean, we took him over George Pickens. That'll never sit good with me. I don't know about you, but I'm taking Pickens over Thornton every day. I think Kayshawn will be good for us too. I mean, if he can stay out of trouble, he had the whole gambling thing, but that's all cleared up. But he hasn't really got a lot of time in the NFL. He's only got 2 career receptions. But I mean, in LSU, he's had a couple monster games. I know it's college, but he had a game, 308 yards, 3 TDs against Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss, they're not really slouches. So, it's not like he can't play against good talent. I already spoke on Polk. I think he's going to be great. Douglas. I mean, he's a 6th-round pick from 2 years ago. But last year, he definitely, like you were saying, he did show flashes of being good. I remember in the Cowboys game, he put someone in the blender completely, spun him around. So, I think he can help. And Bourne's probably our best player out of the receivers for sure. But I think he's hurt the first 4 games, right? He's not playing. Yeah. He's not going the first 4 games, so we'll definitely miss him. But I don't know. Our first 6 games, man, they're looking tough. We could start off 0-6. So
the big thing is that defense is always a great defense. As long as the offense can do their job, that defense is going to hold them.
Yeah. But who we didn't even mention is a huge loss? Christian Barmore.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's devastating. That's like season down the drain bad for us almost, because we just paid him how much money? Just gave, it was
great player,
over $100 million, I'm pretty sure, and didn't even get a snap out of him. I mean, he had blood clots, which is pretty serious. So I'm hoping he gets better. It's bigger than football at that point, but just sucks from a fan point because he's our best D lineman, no doubt. Losing him and Gion.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going next. I want to talk about their defense. Before I move down to their defense, I do want to mention I do like their tight ends, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper they brought in, and they also drafted Jaheim Bell, who I just took in my Dynasty League today. But let's move on to that defense. Dana, you mentioned it. Barmore, that's a gigantic loss for them defensively, and he was so good last season. Secondary, we got Christian Gonzalez, who's been a great player in the league, dominant corner. Their cornerbacks are good. They got him, Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, and then at safety, they're in good hands too. They bring Kyle Duggar back, and then Jabril Peppers had a really good year last year.
Yeah.
So secondary is definitely a strength on that defense. But the front, it is a concern without Barmore. Talk to me about that front.
Keon White, I like a lot. He showed flashes last year of being really good. I think he'll definitely have to step up a lot. Godchuk, he's not bad. He's always been solid. Like Pat was saying, linebackers looking good. I really like Anthony Jennings. I think he brings a lot to the table. And then our secondary is going to be solid. Christian Gonzalez last year only got to play 4 games, so we didn't see that much from him. But when we did, he was locked down. He when we played the Dolphins, he locked up Tyreek for the most part. The only receiver I really think that gave him problems last year was A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith when he was guarding them. But
And he still didn't allow much that game.
Yeah.
Christian Gonzalez, great. He started off the year great and unfortunately had that injury. As long as he can come back, he should be just as good, if not better than he was last year. A lot of the positive, per se, for him sitting out was watching, learning. Everything that I saw him do last year and the little we all saw him, he did very well. And I'm excited to see the matchups. For example, week 1, who's he matching up with?
Jamar Chase.
And if that's not a battle, I don't know what else you want. On to the other corners, Marcus Jones, lost him all last year. 2 years ago,
Stud.
Dude was the best player all around the team. Special
He was all
teams,
pro punt returner,
offense.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He was the only player that year with a touchdown on offense, defense, and special teams. And I'm excited to see how he bounces back this year. He looked very good, but that was also in the whole Belichick and all that other stuff that we're moving on from, unfortunately. But
yeah,
Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar, studs. Everyone wants to go crazy, and obviously, being a Patriots fan, I hate on Bills fans because I'm around so many of them. And everyone wants to go nuts over, the safeties the Bills had, Poyer and Hyde. These two, skill-wise, in my opinion, and like I said, I try to be as modest as possible, I think they are a better duo than those two are, and they have better skill levels than both of those two ever had.
Yeah.
Spicy.
Peppers he's dangerous. Did you see the hit he had on Adams last year?
Yeah, dude, ever since he was at Michigan, he's just been one of those guys. He's fun to watch.
He doesn't take a play off.
In New York.
He really does not take a play off.
He's a dog. Well, the last topic I want to talk about, you talked about, unfortunately, Belichick's gone. And that's the next topic is this new regime, this new coaching staff. How do we feel? Like, what is that feeling like? Because for so long, you could just count on Bill Belichick being there. And it's like, Mike, yeah, you said, well, we expect the defense, no matter what, the defense is going to be great. But it's like, is it? Is it going to be great now with Belichick out of what is that feeling like with him being out the door? Tell me what your confidence level really is with this new regime. Do we feel good about Gerard Mayo?
At first, when the hiring was made, I was excited about it because, he's a former Patriot. He's won a Super Bowl with us. He's lost with us too. He's been there when they've lost Super Bowls. So, he's been there for a long time. But then with the whole QB situation with, he was saying, Drake's outplayed Jacoby so far and this and that. And then the next minute he's saying, Drake's the second best QB on our team. It just seems like he was like uncertain with himself and not sure who he was going to start. So that's one thing that kind of had me worried. I'm not worried about him like coaching the defensive side of the ball. I am a little worried about, what's going to happen on offense, and because we need to put up points or else we're going to get blown out every single game. And, I know we're not going to probably make playoffs this year and we're not going to be competitive, but, I still want to win games. I don't want to, don't want to go 0-16 or nothing like that. But I think we will be picking top 5 next year for sure, no matter what. So I'm down to give him 2 to 3 years to, turn it around and get us in the right direction. But if not, I want to start looking elsewhere.
So I understand where you're coming from, and when they were doing the coaching thing, I thought it was for sure Mike Vrabel.
Yep.
And obviously that didn't end up happening. And either way, I'm good with Mayo. Mayo was a great player, and he is a player's coach. He's that guy that everyone liked, but he also played for Belichick, coached with Belichick. Any of that stuff that has to do with the defense remaining a top defense in the league, which I believe they still are, and they're just younger now. They gotta evolve and find out their spot. Obviously, losing Matt Judon's huge, but at the same time, for the future, he was the older guy on the roster. For the locker room, it sucks losing him.
Yeah.
Like I said, I go to training camp every year. Matt Judon's the one who tells his agent to fuck off when he's out there signing autographs and he says it's time to go. He says, fuck off. I got to see these fans. Like, he's just an all-around good guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, that hurts. But as long as that defense can stay the way they are, and they do have some veterans. They got some guys that have been around for a minute. Jonathan Jones, he's been on the team for a while. Kyle Duggar, like all these guys, they've been there. They know what they're doing.
Yep.
They can be the leaders. And not to mention, Matthew Slater is on the coaching staff.
A lot of guys on the coaching staff. Hightower, I think, Slater.
Yeah.
Troy Brown still.
Yeah, Troy Brown. Mayo's the head coach, obviously.
I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're going to the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to be the best team there is. But I think they will surprise a lot of people. And I love hearing on these shows, radio shows, anything I listen to about the NFL, how they just automatically count them out. Like, oh, they had 2-3 bad years and they're terrible. I don't see them being that bad this year. I feel like they're going to be better than they were last year.
Yeah.
Obviously, they weren't good last year, but they had flashes. I was at the game in New England when they beat Buffalo. Like, seeing Buffalo's fans cry around me was the best.
That is a great sight, isn't it? Our schedule, man, it's just brutal though. Like our first 6 games: Bengals, Seahawks, Jets, Niners, Dolphins, Texans, and our division is just a slaughterhouse. You got to play Aaron Rodgers twice, Josh Allen twice, and then, I mean, I'm not the biggest Tua guy, but I mean, he's played well the last couple seasons.
In reality, Miami's winning the division. That's my opinion. That's what I think is going to end up happening. The Bills, they hit their peak 2 years ago.
I'm not sleeping on the Jets. I'm not sleeping on the Jets, man. Looking at that roster, that defense is scary. And if Aaron Rodgers could stay healthy, it's going to be exciting. But something I said in the beginning is it's like any of those 3 teams right now, and you guys, I respect your guys' honesty saying, we don't expect to go to the playoffs. But it's like those other 3 teams, they all feel like, okay, this is our division to lose. Like, they're all going to come on here and they're going to talk about why they think their team's the best in the division, and respectively so. Like, you could argue that for each team. Like, I think it's the Jets, you could think it's the Dolphins, and you could think it's the Bills, and we could all, make our points.
I think Buffalo is leaving too much for Josh Allen to carry. Like, I mean, they're bringing in Keon Coleman. I mean, he's a rookie, and you're leaning on him to be your number one right away. He's a stud. I wanted us to get him, to be honest with you. I thought there was a chance we were going to get him in the second round, but is that when Buffalo got him? They got him second round, right?
Yeah, they traded down.
Yeah. I would have loved to get him, but I just think for a rookie to pick up what Diggs did for that team it's just, you're asking a lot. And I'm not saying Allen can't carry that team on his back, because he can, but I just think it might be too much in that division, because the Jets, like Pat was saying, Jets are stacked, and you were saying Dolphins are going to win it all, or not win it all, but win the division. So
The Bills will not get anywhere until Sean McDermott's gone. He makes terrible decisions for that team. And I like Josh Allen. I like Josh Allen a lot. I think he's great. But I think that team around him is hurting him.
I think their window's closed, bro. I think last year was it. And when Diggs dropped that pass late in the game, I think it all came crashing down right there.
Like, what is the peak? Like, what is realistically, what is a successful season for the New England Patriots this year?
I mean, if we could win 7 or 8 games, I think that would be an absolute miracle. If they won 7 or 8 games with the weapons we got, our defense is going to be there, going to keep us close in every game. But at the end of the day, you got to put up points. And other than Mondre, man, what are teams scared of when they play us? They're not. We don't have anything. We don't have a number one to put fear in the other team's defense. Our tight ends are all right. I mean, you said Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. They're both kind of, towards the end of their career. They're definitely on the back 9 of their career. So, they're not like Gronk and Hernandez or anything like that. So I don't know. I think 7, 8 wins, and I think the only way we get that is if Drake May plays. We're not getting that with Jacoby Brissett. At least I don't think so. I mean, the whole league knows what you're getting with Brissett. He's probably below middle of the pack quarterback in the league.
Yeah, he's a good fill-in.
Yeah.
He's like a substitute teacher that you want for like a week, but not the whole semester.
Yeah.
I
He's
think
a good
Brissett,
sacrificial lamb behind the line.
Brissett's one of those guys that great backup quarterback, great guy, like you said, fill in. But I also don't disagree with him being the starter, because, like, I think it was something actually Tom Brady said. All these guys are just going in expecting to be the starter. Grow up. Like, you got to learn. You got to watch. You got to learn. You're not just going to go in there and make the mistakes that Mac Jones made. Like, you need to, and not to mention, I don't hate Mac Jones. Mac Jones was set up for failure in New England.
Yeah, I wanted to say that
3
earlier.
different offenses, and I don't want to see him take Trevor Lawrence, because I like Trevor Lawrence, but I would like to see him make some little comeback and show that he's not a scrub like everyone thinks he is, just because of the shitty situation he was in all 3 years.
He looked good in preseason.
And he had no weapons in New England. Devontae Parker, you want him to be your weapon? Like, he had no one.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Gentlemen, this has been a blast talking New England Patriots with you. We're going to have you on again. Hopefully next time Tyler will be in here with me, and we'll make it a party. But, boys, appreciate you hopping on, and we'll have to do it again. Have a good one.
Yeah, for sure,
Thank
Pat.
you.
Thanks, man.
Joining now, Casey Sita. Buddy, how we doing? Talking some Buffalo Bills.
Not bad, man. It's always a good day when you get to talk Bills. We're a week out from the season. I was one of those people that was wishing their summer away. I don't know about you, but I was like, football season couldn't be here soon enough.
It's all I could think about, especially being down here. It's hot as hell. You don't even want to go outside. I'm just like, give me football season. Give me the fall.
Right.
But for those Buffalo Bills fans that happen to be watching right now, Casey actually has his own podcast for the Buffalo Bills specifically, and that's called the Mafia Cast. So be sure to follow along on that. Subscribe. Like I said, if you're a Bills fan, it's good stuff. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by Casey today to talk some Buffalo Bills. Casey, we're basically going to go through kind of just an overview of the Bills offseason and then expectations previewing this upcoming season. So last year, you guys obviously finished 11-6. There was some heat earlier in that year. I remember Ken Dorsey in the offense, a lot of issues, made the change to Joe Brady, and you saw the team starting to play better. They ended up getting into the playoffs at 11-6, and then they lose in the divisional round to the Chiefs 27-24, and obviously that was a great game. The Stephon Diggs dropping that ball late in that game. His last play as a Bill, I think it was. So we're definitely going to have to get into his absence from this new team. Brand new wide receiving core. So definitely got to talk about that. Brand new outside of Shakir. It's everybody in the room is new. So I want to get your thoughts on the wide receiving core as a whole right now. And then besides that, there was a lot of guys on defense like Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, not going to be there anymore. Those are big leaders in the locker room that they're no longer going to have. Mitch Morse, they lost on the offensive line. Gabe Davis, another loss. Like I said, brand new receiving room. And then, of course, this just recently, Matt Milano goes down and he's going to be out. So it's definitely been a shakeup for the Buffalo Bills this offseason. Obviously, they draft Keon Coleman. Is he going to be that number one guy that steps up for them? But overall, let's start out with the wide receiver room. How are you feeling about that right now, Casey?
So the wide receiver room, we all saw what Shakir did on, what was it, half as many targets. I want to say that he had like 42 targets starting week 10 on, and Diggs had something like 89. But Shakir still ended up with more yards, more catches, and more touchdowns in that span. So I think Shakir is ready to step into being a number one wide receiver, because I just don't see that. I think he's going to be a very good number two for the Bills. And I also think the same thing with Keon Coleman. I was like, that is a great T. Higgins. That is, somebody that can win basically any one-on-one matchup just purely with their physicality and catch radius. But he's not going to be the guy that is going to demand 10, targets every game. I believe we went through all this cap hell this year, like letting guys go, like you mentioned, Mitch Morris, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer. And we did that to kind of bite the bullet all at once. And so next year we're going to have north of $40 million, and that's before any restructure or extension happens that pushes money further down the road. And to really see what Curtis Samuel is going to do. But like the guys like Mac Hollins and MVS, those are just place fillers this year. Well, Mac Hollins, because he's such a special teams player, and McDermott being both love special teams, more than anything, he might stick around for a little bit. But guys like MVS, they're just 1 year rentals, while they figure out what they have going on in the future. And then in 2025, I think is when they're going to make their big move for a wide receiver, whether that be trade up or sign somebody that ends up on the market.
And two guys, too, that really stepped up last season, in my opinion, were James Cook. And I was pounding the drum on this podcast, like the first probably 8 weeks of the season last year. I was like, get this dude the ball, because there's just too much pressure. I feel like the Bills, while Josh Allen is like Superman out there, they fall in love with just like letting him dictate everything. And it's like you can make it so much simpler for him, the quarterback, by taking pressure off him and getting the run game involved, getting these little screen dump offs, whatever, to James Cook, because we've seen it. We saw it last year. Like if you get the ball in James Cook's hands in open space, he can really do some damage. I know there were some drop issues, but I like James Cook a lot. And then obviously they brought in Ray Davis in the draft this season. They still got Ty Johnson. So I like their running backs as well. But the other guy I'm referring to is Dalton Kincaid, your draft pick last season. And this guy is just the perfect, like, modern day hybrid tight end type. And I feel like he still needs to get better in the blocking game, but it's great to have a guy like Dawson Knox in the room, a good veteran tight end who can still do it himself, to teach him the ways. But I just think he's a freak athletically, and I really think Dalton Kincaid is going to explode this year. So it's like the wide receiver room, even if it takes a little bit to get going, it doesn't matter as much when you got James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, those guys to step up. Defense as a whole, like I said, Matt Milano goes down. So that's a huge leadership role guy missing from your defense going into the season. And then, like I said, you lose Jordan Poyer and Mike Hyde in the back end. Who's going to be that guy that like steps up as the leader of this defense? Is it a guy like Terrell Bernard? Like, who's going to be that guy that steps up and takes the leadership role on this defense?
I mean, a leadership, it'll always be Von Miller. You know, he's been a captain since he's been a Bill. And I know last year's play was horrendous, but he's still the locker room guy. You know, he will always be like kind of at this point in his career, kind of everybody's grandpa, you know, truly showing them the way. In the linebacker room, it will be Terrell Bernard. You saw how he played last year. It looked like he had been in the league for 6 years. I mean, he was, getting sacks, forcing fumbles, recovering fumbles, getting interceptions. He's led the team in tackles. And in my opinion, I think if at least he plays in the Kansas City game in the playoffs, I think we win. That game, I throw up to health, but the linebackers this year and the defense this year, I'm very excited for. I mean, Dorian Williams, they kind of had him on the same path that they did with Terrell Bernard. Come in a pinch, whether we're up by 100, down by 100, come play, get some reps, and then play special teams, you know, so you earn your spot here on the roster and grow, just learn and grow. And hopefully, you know, do I expect Dorian Williams to come in and do what Bernard did last year? No. But I expect him to be better than what you saw at the end of last year. I mean, in that Kansas City game in the playoffs, you saw the Bills stop them on 3rd and long, but he was called for pass interference because he didn't have his head on a swivel covering the middle of the field and just ran up and as when he did see the receiver, he kind of leaned back and completely bumped him. And they threw the flag and it extended the drive, and Kansas City ended up scoring on that drive. Losing Matt Milano, it sucks, yes, but at least we did it. I mean, it sucks to say it this way too. At least we did it it happened at the beginning of the year, so there is that possibility he does come back and that our linebacker group gets better throughout the year, you know, instead of the vice versa, where a lot of times position groups get worse. So the leadership, I'm not too worried about. I mean, Mike Hyde, Jordan Poyer, they were obviously, you know, cornerstones in that locker room. But you still have a veteran in Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, and Taron Johnson for sure. You know, he's one of the most underrated, unacknowledged players in the league. He's absolutely phenomenal.
Totally agree.
Then Von Miller. I mean, this season comes a lot down to Von Miller. He's only going to be basically a straight-up pass rusher this year. I feel like you'll hardly see him on first down. That's going to be the A.J. Epinesa and Gregory Rousseau downs. So I think between being the locker room guy and that, I think a lot of this year is going to come down to Von Miller.
I mean, their front, Casey, you can't deny it. Their front, with Daquan Jones coming back now, it's going to be very good front four on that Bills D-line. And then even cornerback, they lose Tre'Davious White, who's commonly been hurt anyways these last couple of years. I'm worried as a Rams fan. Like, we bring him in, and it's very exciting for me to have Tre'Davious White, but it is concerning because he hasn't stayed healthy these last few years. But when he is, we all know he's a dominant corner. But even with that, like, Rasul Douglas played really well last year. Benford played really well last year. Taron Johnson, like you said, and I've been saying this as well, like Taron Johnson, one of the most underrated. He's one of the best in the league at the nickel position. I like their cornerbacks. My concern, if any, on that defense would be safety. Taylor Rapp, I know him well from when he played with the Rams. Not a huge fan of him. Damar Hamlin, he's been okay, I'd say. I haven't seen him really do anything consistently as a starting safety in the league to this point. I know they drafted Cole Bishop, and then they got Cam Lewis, and you also bring in Mike Edwards, he's got 2 Super Bowls now. Mike Edwards has been a part of a lot of winning football, a lot of really good defenses as well. So I'm curious, like, is Mike Edwards going to get a good role in this defense? How do you feel about the safety position right now?
I mean, that's definitely been the number one question mark on the Bills defense this year, you know, just especially on our show, just talking about it. who's going to be the starter. I mean, it's Taylor Rapp has solidified himself. And like you, I wasn't a huge fan of him last year. But in my opinion, he's like the perfect like third safety for a team, somebody come in and play packages. But he's been the one that's also taken on the leadership role in that room. And before DeMar got hurt, he was subbing in for Micah Hyde, and he was playing pretty well. I mean, he struggled more so in the pass coverage, but if you let him get downhill in the box, he was phenomenal. He was actually pretty good. In training camp this year, he's played better, and especially the pass coverage. But now he's kind of injured, and Mike Edwards is getting healthier. And I think they're going to go with the veteran leadership with Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp and have them start while Cole Bishop comes up to speed because he's been hurt this entire preseason. And then in my opinion, he'll be the one that comes in when they do bring in a third safety, because that will happen a little bit more on third down with Milano getting hurt. They're not just going to be able to sit in nickel anymore. Because Dorian Williams or Joe Andreessen, Buffalo Joe, not like nobody who's going to be subbing in at linebacker for Milano is very good at pass coverage. I'm not afraid of that group, and especially with the track record that McDermott and Bobby Babich have. I mean, they turned Burn Boyer and Micah Hyde, these two castaways from the NFL, turn them into all pros and the best, in my opinion, in their time together, they're the best safety duo in the league. And that was for 6 straight seasons.
That's a great point, because McDermott has shown he's been a great defensive mind. There have been some, times these past couple of years where McDermott's been on the hot seat. I'm just curious, in your opinion. I know it's tough. With Patrick Mahomes in your conference, and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and all these guys that you got to deal with and go through in the AFC. But at a certain point, it's got to feel like, as a Bills fan, it's like you keep getting to that same point, but you just can't get over it with this guy. So I'm just curious, going into this season, is there added pressure? Like, it's like, all right, McDermott, it's been time after time after time, get us over that hump. Like, is it on him to do that this season?
Personally, I think it's the opposite, because of how we did a roster reset this year. Unless the Bills go 1-15 somehow, or 1-16. Yeah, McDermott is 100% safe because there's so much turnover. So this year, he's 100% getting a pass, but next year it's going to be iffy to where this team is okay. Say 10-7, 11-6, 9-8, whatever. But if the team does the same thing again and there's no growth next year in the 2025-2026 season, that's when I 100% could see it happening. Getting a new stadium, opening in 26. I can, that's when you go to the new fancy, young, offensive-minded head coach for your fancy schmancy quarterback, in your fancy schmancy stadium. That's a lot of optics happen that way, and teams think about that kind of thing. But it is, his decision making has been concerning. But last year, we were all clamoring for McDermott to be more aggressive, to blitz more, to go for it on fourth down more often. And this is the first year without Leslie Frazier, and McDermott did that. He did everything we asked. But in my opinion, last year, a lot of it goes back to injuries. At some point, every single starter for our defense was out at least a game. So it was hard to, get any true consistency with that.
Josh Allen, does he need to take any kind of leap? Does anything need to change from Josh Allen this season for them to be a better football team? And is it perhaps being a better leader now that you have this young team?
I mean, guys have come out and said that Josh has changed. Like, they see a different Josh. He said, and you can see, I saw it the first time in training camp. First time I saw a picture of him. He's slim. He slimmed way down. He said he's changed his eating habits. He's got a chef now. His 2 a.m. Big Mac doesn't happen anymore. He's more vocal in the locker room. So that, I think, he is taking that upon himself, to really be a leader for this team. What he can change, obviously, everybody's going to point to the turnovers. But if you look at like Patrick Mahomes was third in the league in turnovers last year, but nobody's saying a word about that. Oh, Mahomes had a down year. He only had 27 passing touchdowns. Okay, Josh had 29 and more yards and 2 more interceptions than the guy. But one of them is a turnover machine, and one of them is the best player in the league. And in my opinion, Mahomes is the best quarterback and best player in the league. But then there's a step, and it's Josh. And then there's another bump down, and it's Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. Josh is 100% like the second best player or quarterback, however you want to put it, in the NFL. And as long as we have him on this team, it's kind of the whole Brady thing. As long as we got Brady, we got a chance. As long as we have Josh, we've got a chance, because everybody says he needs to run less. He's going to get hurt. He's going to turn into Cam Newton. He doesn't get designed runs. His runs are scrambles and off script. That's on him, but he's big enough and strong enough, and at this point proven he won't really get hurt. He's gotten smarter to slide. He's gotten smarter to go out of bounds. Yes, when necessary, he will run you over and he will hurt you. But that's in the playoffs or late in the fourth quarter when it's 4th and 5. And last year, I think he was just trying to do too much. I think he was trying to force the ball to Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. It was clear as day, and that led to multiple turnovers and bad decisions, and all of us going, Josh, what the hell are you doing? And just trying to figure it out. So I think the young wide receivers and the new wide receivers, it kind of just gives an element to this offense to where Josh doesn't have to force feed anybody the ball. And defenses can't just zero in on 1 or 2 receivers. They're not going to know where the ball is going because there's going to be too many options. He's going to give defenses trouble this year, and it's purely because of he's going to get to truly show his decision making and just throw it to whoever's open.
Yeah, you nailed it, because he is that type of guy where it doesn't necessarily matter that much who is around you, because you are Superman and you can make everybody better around you. Josh Allen has proven that. I actually just took him right before you and I hopped on in my dynasty league. I took him as my QB, and I've never had him in fantasy ever. And I've always been jealous of people that did, because you see him out there just racking it up, sometimes getting 50 points. And it's like, I've never had that experience. So I got him. So I'm excited about that.
Dude, it's fun. Just wait. It's fun. When he throws for 303 and runs for 75-1, you're going to be like, oh my God, I won my league.
Yes, I'm excited for that feeling. Casey, this has been a blast. Last question I have for you. Tyler Bass missed a big kick last year in that playoff game.
Yep.
I knew there had to be some concerns. I'm sure he dealt with a lot of shit this offseason. What is your confidence in Tyler Bass right now going into this season?
So for starters, when he lined up to kick, me, my friend Ronnie and Mike, who were on our podcast, we texted each other at the same time and said, this is not going in. We all said the same message in some different version at the same time. We all knew it. You're a golfer, just like me. When you get the yips, there is nothing you can do about it. You can sit on a range and go play 100 holes in a week. I don't care what you do. You're not going to change anything. Just no matter what. And it's just in your head. And that's, to me, the same way I see kickers is the same way I see golfers. Once it's in your head, it is a bitch to get out of your head. Something great has to happen. You got to chip it in. You got to hit a bomb drive. You got to hit a sweet draw around a tree. Something that just sparks it for you. Like all of a sudden it sparks for you. And you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. I've done this a million times. And to me, it seems like Tyler Bass is right at the level to where he's going to see like 152-yard field goal go in, and he's going to be like, oh, yeah, I remember why I got this contract extension. I was one of, if not at the time, the best kicker in the league. There was first 2-3 years in the league, he was automatic. He was fantastic. When was top 3 in scoring those first 3 years, top 5 in kick make percentage. So in my opinion, I just think that he is as low as you can get, and I think the Bills know that. They're just trying to kind of ride that wave, and again, they extended him. They'll lose $4.7 million against the cap. It'll be dead cap this year if they cut him. But you're going to cut, if he doesn't get any better, mediocre and then what? Another mediocre kicker that's out there. There's not much better. If there was a truly better option, I could understand it. But like Bean, I would rather ride this wave and let him fight through these mental issues and let him go. Just let him kick, because I think he's going to figure it out one of these days.
And I hope he does for you guys, because there's nothing more stressful than having that kicker that you're like, you really don't know. And it could be from anywhere on the field. And you're like, I really don't know. And especially when you get in that moment where you need it at the end of a game, it is that feeling in your stomach. Like, you can't even explain it. It's awful.
Well, my opinion, he should have even had to make that kick last year.
Absolutely. I agree.
Diggs catches that football.
Right.
When he went like this to Josh after that pass, I was like, I don't know what you're referring to being that close from being perfect, because that ball hit you in the back shoulder pad. There's not a more perfect football that could have been thrown from 60 yards away from you. That was what sealed it for me with Diggs, and how I knew that there truly was something going on behind the scenes. Because at that moment, I was like, he truly can't take responsibility, because that's what it looked like. Put your hand up, tap your chest, my bad, anything like that. You played sports, I played sports. It taught you that kind of accountability. And he was like, no, we were that close from being really good. It's like, dude, you were that close. Like, I don't know what more you could have wanted.
Yeah, and at that point, it's get him out of there. Now he's in Houston. Right. I went wrong with that offense. So, well, Casey, this has been a blast. Appreciate you coming on, talking some Buffalo Bills. We'll have to do this again, man.
Yeah, Pat, no problem. This was a lot of fun. Anytime you want, let me know.
Joining now to talk some Miami Dolphins, we got Anthony and we got Joe. Fellas, how we doing?
Good, man.
Good, man. How you doing?
Excellent. Pleasure to be talking some Dolphins with you. Appreciate you hopping on. And let's go through it. Let's get after it and talk some Miami Dolphins. Last year, you finished the year 11-6. I had Anthony on probably around the halfway point last year, when things were really rolling for this team and their defense was just starting to pick it up as well. So they definitely, that offense took the league by storm last year. Tua had a great year. Then you got Tyreek Hill, Waddle. The running game with what Mostert did was phenomenal. Achane coming in as a rookie last year really lit the league up as well. So there's not too many weaknesses to talk about this offseason. They bring in Kendall Fuller at corner. They bring in Jordan Poyer, vet in the room at safety. They get Jordan Brooks at linebacker, Calais Campbell, another savvy vet on the edge for them. And then late signing, they get Odell Beckham, who is hurt right now. Curious to see what you guys thought of that move in a bit. But then a big loss to me, guys, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, is, in my opinion, the heart and soul of that defense was Christian Wilkins, and he's not in the room anymore. So what's that defense going to look like without him, without his presence? They also lose Robert Hunt. They lose Andrew Van Ginkel, who's a guy who really has stepped up these last couple of years. We've seen injuries of Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb as well. And Van Ginkel has been a guy that's really stepped up for them. So that's a big loss, I thought. Looking at this roster, though, I mean, I feel like this team's ready to roll. Tua's got his contract. Everybody's happy. Tyreek's a little banged up right now, and I mentioned the Odell injury. But besides that, when you just look at this team on paper, offensive line, they brought in Jonnu Smith, the guy I didn't even mention yet at tight end. So a guy, I like Jonnu Smith a lot. Looking at the defense, I want to know, like, that Christian Wilkins absence, how big is that going to be, especially early in the season? Secondary looks pretty good to me. Linebackers look pretty good to me. Like I said, there's not too much to question looking at this team. One of the questions I did have, and I'll start out with you, Anthony, is like I said, they brought in Odell Beckham, but after Tyreek Hill, after Jalen Waddle, and those guys, obviously, we got to keep them healthy throughout the season. But who is that third option going to be on offense? Like, is it Braxton Berrios? Do we feel good about that guy stepping up? Or are they really going to rely on Jonnu Smith, you think, after bringing him in?
Yeah, I think John Smith's going to have a big year. You see all he did last year with the Falcons behind Pitts. I mean, he put up better numbers than Pitts. He's a big body, he's fast. But, you got Achane, who's going to be lining up in slot a little bit too. And then we got Malik Washington, the rookie. The guy's he's a big body. He's a stud. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington's the one that shows out the first 4 weeks before Beckham gets back. Beckham, he's got a lot of injuries, got injury history, but he's a solid, wide receiver 3. He's not going to be what he used to be, but I don't think a lot of teams have the wide receiver depth as the Dolphins do. And Berrios is solid, but I think you're going to see a lot of Jonnu Smith packages and a lot of Malik Washington, and you're going to see Achane catching balls out of the backfield.
Yeah, and the running back room is loaded too. Just looking at it, like I said, Mostert, what he did last year, Achane, not to mention you get Jalen Wright this year's draft, and then Jeff Wilson as well. So very capable running backs across the board. Joe, do you have any concerns for this team weapons wise outside of just everybody staying healthy?
Yeah, they're so Tyreek and Jalen dependent that anytime those guys go down, because unfortunately Tyreek's a little banged up, and Jalen seems like lately he's, unfortunately, I hate saying it, but he seems like he's kind of been getting some injury bugs almost every 3-4 games. So I think they're so dependent on those two that it is worrisome, because they never really do have anybody in the wide receiver room that steps up. Mostert, he had 23 touchdowns, but a lot of those touchdowns were 5 yards and in. So it's a tricky scenario, because I think outside of those two big wide receivers, it's a guessing game. But at the same token, those two wide receivers are really good. So, and they lead the league in offense. So because of those two, so it's kind of it's a tricky formula to figure out if you're a defense, and because that speed doesn't, you can't coach that. And I do think, like Anthony said, I think Achane is going to get a little more passes, and something that he didn't do last year, and kind of free him up, because I think that kid's going to be pretty special.
He's electric.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different speed.
It is. It's all over the field in Miami too. And I mentioned they did lose Robert Hunt. Before we move on to the defense, I do want to just cover the offensive line. I think there could be some concerns at guard for them, possibly right tackle as well. How do you guys feel about their offensive line this year?
That's how I feel about
it. Yeah, Anthony is a nervous wreck about it, but I think that they've created such a formula that their line, then when they lost their games against the Bills, against the Chiefs, against the Eagles, like, it was defense and some things on Tua and Tyreek and Jalen didn't step up. It was never the O-line let up a big sack. It wasn't an O-line, you know what I mean? So I think they get the ball out so quick that they mask a lot of their issues, because their two guards are not very good, in my opinion. But they seem to always produce yardage and all that stuff. So I think that they got two good bookends. Austin Jackson is really good, and obviously Armstead is a Pro Bowler. So, those guys are good. And I do think they're going to have, now with Jonnu and Smythe, I think they're going to have a lot of two tight end sets. So I think they do a really good job. Mike does a really good job of, like, masking all of their flaws. You know what I mean? Because I think they do have flaws in the interior, for sure. There's no question.
We've seen Kyle Shanahan doing it with the Niners for years, and that's a Shanahan disciple. McDaniel he built that run game in San Fran. It was a big part of it. But Anthony, what are your thoughts on it?
I feel a lot better if Kendall Lamb comes back healthy.
Yeah.
But like Joe said, they do mask it. Last year, they still had the number one offense in the league, and the line's probably better this year than last year. I mean, you got the rookie Paul. He's going to step in. Yeah, the guards aren't very good, but they weren't very good last year, and we still have the league in offense. So just keep Tua healthy and get the ball out. I think the line will be fine, just like last year. I am still worried about the center exchange. We had a lot of problems with that last year. But like Joe says, we text every day, and I'm constantly telling him how the line is terrible, and he constantly tells me how we had number one offense last year. So
Right.
He's right.
I think what's frustrating about it is like the one time that they had all 5 starters last year, they scored 70 points. Like that's what's so frustrating is that I think if they ever did invest in the line, it could, and that's kind of a like the one time they've had their healthy 5 starters, they had 70 points. Those 5 guys never played another game together, so they had some injuries last year on the O-line, and that's what's so crazy about it is they still produced with not their best players. So it's just, but if they did put those guys in, starters in, invest and get some free agents in there, I mean, 70 points is not something that's occurred very often. It's tricky as a fan because they don't really address it as much as I think they should, because they do a good job of hiding it.
And we got a great offensive line coach, too, Butch Berry.
Yeah, he's good.
So, I mean, if you look at our line, I don't even remember the last time our line was good. Maybe Richie Incognito and Pouncey, those guys.
Yeah, those guys.
But this guy, he came in, and he's a very good offensive line coach. So I trust what he's doing. And like I said, man, we just got to keep Tua healthy. Because if Tua goes down, then we're in trouble.
I want to talk about this defense with you guys. First of all, going through it, this is a defense that I thought overall underachieved last season. I really expected with Vic Fangio in there that this team was really going to take off defensively, and we saw flashes of that. And I remember talking to you about it, Anthony, and I was like, damn, it feels like this team's really getting it going defensively, and if they could get that with that offense, it's going to be scary. But I just feel like the consistency wasn't there. I want to know, like, what went on with Vic Fangio last year, like, because they had the talent to me, and it just seemed like it wasn't clicking. They didn't like the system, were some rumors that I heard at least. They didn't buy into it. Jalen Ramsey, I know, made some comments about that. But looking at this defense, they do lose Christian Wilkins, and that's what is sticking out to me is how is this defense going to look without him? Am I making too big of a deal about it? As it really should be when we're looking at their front. I mean, I know Seiler's a good player, and you add Calais Campbell as well. But besides that, like, who's going to step up and fill that void? Other than that, I think the secondary looks like it's in good shape right now. Kohu, we saw him get exposed a few games last year. But besides that, like I said, they brought in Kendall Fuller. It's a huge addition for them. And I really like how their linebackers look as well. But talk to me about the defense. Why didn't it click last year with Vic Fangio? And am I making too big a deal about Christian Wilkins not being there this year?
Yes, you are. And Vic Fangio didn't want to be there. I mean, heard things from these players now come out in their podcasts and stuff, but he wasn't in it to win it, and he didn't want to be in Miami. I'm not sure why he was hired, but I know I was excited when he was hired. But, like, it seemed like he had an ego problem. Cam Smith should have been playing all year long. He had Eli Apple playing over him, and the defense still finished, I believe, top 10. We still had a good defense. We had a lot of inconsistencies, but the defense itself was not the problem. But, Wilkins, yeah, obviously it's a huge loss, but Calais Campbell's a beast, and Sealer is, in my opinion, just as good as Wilkins, if not better in his career. He's very underrated. I watch every single Dolphins game for the past 15 years, and Sealer is probably the most underrated player the Dolphins have had in the past decade. He's not talked about, but he's very good. I'm not worried about the Wilkins loss. It's not going to affect anything. I don't think it's going to affect anything. The secondary is loaded. We got Poyer now as a safety. You know, Holland, Fuller, and Ramsey. The main thing is these guys just got to stay healthy. They all have a history of injuries. We have the oldest team in the league right now, and if the defense can stay healthy, you're going to see a top 5 unit, in my opinion. We have linebackers. That was our biggest weakness last year. You know,
Baker,
what's his name? Duke Riley
Jerome
and
Baker.
Baker. You know,
Baker.
Walker now. We got guys that can just. We got 3 capable starters compared to last year. You know, Ginkle could play it. He was good. We lost him, and I was kind of upset by losing him, but he wanted to go to Minnesota. I think the defense is going to be fine. Joe.
Yeah, I think Wilkins is a big loss. There's no, I mean, but I think what's interesting about Wilkins is like until last year he never produced sacks. Like he never had more than 5 sacks a year. He's unbelievable against the run. Like we never really got ran on. It was mostly scrambles from like a QB or anything like that. We through the tackles we were always great against the run with him. He's so dominant against the run. But sacks wise, I mean, Sealer last year had 10.5 sacks. I mean, those guys are hard to find. 10.5 sacks. I mean, that doesn't grow on trees. So I think Sealer is underrated. He doesn't get a lot of talk about, but I think this year what they're doing is they brought in the guy that was the D-line coach there at Baltimore. So I think they're just going to go so rotational and just plug in these guys. And Sealer's going to get a lot of snaps. There's no question. And Campbell's going to get a lot of snaps. But like Sealer and Wilkins last year, they took up 80% of their snaps. Like it was always Wilkins and Sealer on the field. And towards the end of the season, towards the end of the games, is when we lost games. So I think this coach does a great job of just the D coach is rotational. He's just going to keep them fresh. They have so many D tackles right now. Like they have so many right now. And I think they're just going to try to keep them fresh. And it's a completely different scheme from the Wilkins era because Wilkins played, I don't think he's ever missed a game. He missed maybe 2 or 3 games in 4 or 5 years, however long he was here. I mean, he was a great player. I love Christian Wilkins, but I just think they're going to have to go rotational and keep the bodies fresh a little bit better. And last year, there's no question that Wilkins and Sealer got tired. There's no question. There's no question they were, limping coming in. They played so many snaps.
2 additions I failed to mention. You talked about the new DC, Anthony Weaver, coming in, bringing that Baltimore defensive culture to Miami. That's going to be interesting. How is it looking? What are you guys hearing when it comes to him, the new DC? And then another guy I failed to mention, your first round pick, Chop Robinson. How's he looking?
Yeah, I think their defense is. I think Anthony Weaver is very. I think he's very heavy with the blitz. I think he stacks a lot, but his whole defense is built on linebackers.
Yep.
So, now we got 2 pretty good linebackers. And then I think what's going to be interesting with him is when you blitz against some of these good quarterbacks, it it puts you on an island. So you got to hit on these blitzes. So that's going to be interesting. But he's always had a good defense with Baltimore. They got to get Chubb back. They got to get JP back because and Chop, I think, is really, really, really good off the edge. I just think he's so bad against the run right now. So if he gets in the game on a first or second down, they're just going to run right at him. So I think he's going to be a third down guy right now. But I do think Chop's going to be good in a few years. But just right now, he's not ready to be an every down guy. But
he's having a lot of trouble setting the edge right now.
Yeah, he's just in the preseason games when he was in, they just ran right at him. So, but he's got talent. There's no question. Because so I think on a third down play, he's going to get plugged in and he's going to produce sacks. There's no question. His speed is unbelievable. It really is. But it's going to be interesting with Anthony because I think he blitzes a lot, and with our guys not fully healthy right now, JP and Chubb and chops so young. We got to hit on those. We got to hit on those blitz schemes.
Anthony, you got anything you want to add?
No, he hit it. It's a linebacker heavy defense. You got to have good linebackers. We got two solid linebackers now, which we haven't had in forever. Like Joe said, you got to hit on the blitzes, but our secondary is really good. So, one-on-one doesn't really scare me as much as maybe other teams because we have two solid, lockdown defenders. Fuller didn't have the greatest year last year, but he had a great year 2 years ago, and he's a good cornerback, and, Ramsey's a Hall of Famer. So, I think the defense, like I said, is going to be better than last year just because of the scheme and the upgrade in linebackers.
Going through these division previews, we've done a lot of AFC so far, and what I'm noticing is it's just like, damn, this conference is stacked. I can't remember a time in my lifetime where I've seen a conference just so stacked, and it's like, for me, I couldn't be happier to be in the NFC right now, where it's like you only got to get through, it feels like 3 or 4 teams to get to the Super Bowl if you get in. And the AFC, it's like, holy moly, it's going to be a dogfight to get just a wild card berth in the AFC right now. So looking at you guys against the rest of the AFC, like, what concerns you looking at those? We know you lost to the Kansas City in the playoffs last year, and weather obviously has a big thing to do with that. Being put in that situation in Kansas City, it's a tough environment to be in, on top of how banged up you were as well going into that game. But looking at your roster against the rest of the AFC, like, what concerns you? For another question I have is, like, does Tua need to make – I know he made a big leap last year, but, like, for this team to actually compete for a Super Bowl this year, does he have to take it? And he just got paid. He's a top 5 quarterback now when it comes to payroll. Does he need to take an even bigger leap for this team to be serious Super Bowl contenders, to be, like, considered this team could be in the AFC Championship?
I think if Tua plays like he played last year, and, a big problem last year was injuries for us. We lost, probably half of our starters, legit. I mean, people can say it's an excuse, but we literally were playing backups in the playoffs. More than half the defense was out. You can't win games with your backups against the Chiefs. I don't care if it was negative 100. Another thing, people don't realize, Tua led the league in passing. He's a great quarterback. The problem was play calling. I love Mike McDaniel, but he needs to run the ball. And especially in these cold weather games, you can't have Tua throwing 40 times. He's just not working. And we've seen it the last 2 years. It hasn't worked. You got 3 dynamic running backs. You need to run the ball in December. And I think if he can get over this hump of, throwing 40 times and just handing the ball off to Achane and Mostert and Jalen and Wright, that will take care of itself. And Tua, he'll lead the team. He's a captain now. He's got more swag. He got paid, yes, but his confidence level right now is at an all-time high. He's loose, but it's not all on Tua. We have to utilize the run game in December. All my buddies say, yeah, you beat up on teams in September and October when it's warm, and then you can't do anything, and they blame Tua. But Tua, what did Tua do? He did what he did. He's leading the league in passing. He's throwing 30 touchdowns. Run the ball. That's the key for me. Come December, January, we run the ball. Tua plays and balls out. There's no team that's better. We have the team this year. This is the best team we've had, I think, since I've been around. But we're also an older team, so injuries, are going to happen. But we have to stay healthy as can be, and again, we have to run the ball in the cold weather. And if we do, we'll win more games in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Tua's got to. I love Tua, but he's got to win some we got to beat the Bills. I mean, there's there's no other way around it. I mean, the Bills have our number. There's no question. And if they want to get a division, if their quickest way to a playoff victory is hosting at home. They got to beat Buffalo. I mean, Tua's 12-0 versus the Jets and Patriots, and he's 1-7 or 1-6 against the Bills. I mean, it's crazy. They just can't beat Buffalo, and they got to beat them. Week 2, I think is a huge game, because I think if they don't beat Buffalo week 2, I don't know when they ever will, because the Bills are, I think, a little less effective on offense this year with all the losses they've had. I think they'll still be good because Josh is, a great quarterback, and he's tough, but I do think Tua just has to produce a little bit more in those late December games, because I don't think the stats lie. I think his numbers are poor in cold games. There's, you know what I mean? Like, he's that one game in Buffalo a couple of years ago, I think they put up 30 and Josh just scored a touchdown at the end and they lost by 2 or 3. That was not Tua's fault. That was defense. They let up, I think, 37 to Buffalo that game. So Tua's played well in the cold, but not consistently. So I do think if they want to, and I think Anthony's right, their roster's stacked. I mean, they got a lot of Pro Bowl athletes on that team. They got a lot of leadership. They got some young speed on that team. They got a good roster, and they got a good coach. So I do think that Tua's got to win some big games. There's no question. Similar to, I think, the Bills, rise. I mean, the Bills missed the playoffs for 20-odd years or whatever it was, and then they got to the playoffs and won their first game, and then they kind of just kept taking off. You got to do it, and until you do it, it's just kind of, wishing. So they got to win some big games in the December, I think.
Last question I got, just might as well finish off the roster. Special teams, Anthony, do we feel any better about Jason Sanders this year?
Yeah, I do. He's been really good, actually, in training.
It's great to hear.
Yes, he's pick him on your fantasy team. He's, every time I get on Twitter, I see he's 5 for 5, 6 for 6 from 50 plus. I mean, let's hope, because last year was a rocky roller coaster, but I think he figured something out. So he's been good during training camp, from all the reports that I read.
He's like, every time he goes to kick, I never know if he's gonna make it. Like but that he makes some big ones. There's no doubt. But a couple of years ago he was really good, and then these last couple of years he's been like, I think he was better last year than he was the year prior, for sure.
I'm more worried about the punter.
The punter's bad.
Terrible.
The punter's not a good punter, so that's not good.
Who's the punter?
I wish we signed
Jake Bailey.
Bailey, yeah.
He's terrible. It's gonna be a problem for us.
He can't flip the field. He's like dead last in the league in flipping field.
He's from New England too, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But
all right.
I got faith in Jason this year. Hopefully. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Well, wishing you guys the best of luck. Who we open with? Who's Miami open with?
We got Jacksonville in Miami.
That's right. Okay.
I'll take 3.5
matchup. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking some Miami Dolphins with you. Appreciate you coming on and talking with me, and we'll be sure to have you back on throughout the season.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Pat.
Joining me now on the New Score podcast to talk some New York Jets, Pete. Pete, how we doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you. Excited to do this.
I started thinking, I was like, who do I know that's a Jets fan? And then I was like, Peter Sagona. Love it.
Not too many of us, man.
No, not too many of you that I know, at least. So I'm glad I thought of you, and it's clutch that you're on here talking with me through the New York Jets. So let's talk about your New York Jets. Last year, you have a crazy offseason where you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and then as we know, 4 plays into the season, he goes down, out for the season. In comes Zach Wilson, and a lot of turmoil last season. This year, they had another busy offseason. They brought in Tyron Smith on the O-line, Morgan Moses on the O-line, and John Simpson on the O-line. And when we talked about offseason acquisitions months back, and I believe it was like March or April, when we were talking about every team, what they were doing, I talked about that for the Jets, the impact, like getting those guys on the offensive line, that is huge for Aaron Rodgers. And that was obviously a concern last season. So I thought great job by them this offseason, getting 3 new guys in there. And then obviously they bring in Mike Williams as well, wide receiver. They get Hassan Reddick in a trade, but Hassan Reddick needs a new contract. So it's a little weird there, and I'm sure we're going to dive into that pretty soon. They do lose Bryce Huff, who ends up on the Eagles. They lost Jordan Whitehead and then Quentin Jefferson as well. Pete, I'm not going to lie to you. Looking at this team right now, it's hard not to love it. What this defense looks like, especially if they do end up getting a deal done with Hassan Reddick and he plays there, there's not really a weakness at all when you're looking at this defense. Their D-line specifically is just spectacular. It's freakish. The depth of it is very scary. Like there's just no weakness when you're looking at their defense. And obviously Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed and Michael Carter, they're all top-notch cornerbacks. Like their secondary is in great hands. Then you got Aaron Rodgers coming off that Achilles injury at his age. That has to be a concern. You'd be foolish not to think like worst case scenario. And obviously being a Jets fan, you've seen that. How concerned are you right now about Aaron Rodgers? And is that the number one concern?
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm pretty concerned. I mean, obviously, tearing your Achilles is one of the worst injuries in sports, right? Especially for, a guy 40 years old. I mean, I loved hearing last year that he was ready to come back if they did make a run to the playoffs. Whether he would have or not, we'll never know. But I'm concerned. I'm glad we have a decent backup in Tyrod Taylor. I think the Jets' window is very, very small. And it completely has to do with Aaron Rodgers. If they don't, make it at least the AFC Championship game, I'm not saying that they should, but these next, I think, 2 years are the time to do it before you got to pay all these guys, your Breece Halls, your Sauce Gardners, your, Quentin Williams got his deal. Guys like that, they're going to want a lot of money. I'm concerned.
There's not really any glaring weakness though, right? Like the concern for me would have been O-line after last year. And do you agree that like they did a lot to improve that offensive line unit?
Their offensive line is the only thing I thought that needed work, honestly, from last year. I mean, looking back on it, we were very excited to, obviously get Aaron Rodgers last year, but seeing Zach Wilson run for his life, dude's a pretty athletic kid. He can run really well. What was Aaron Rodgers going to do behind that line?
Right.
Obviously, he might have made a few more plays. He throws the ball a hell of a lot better than Zach Wilson, but they're getting Elijah Vera Tucker back from a pretty bad injury. He was one of their best linemen last year before he went down. Joe Tippmann played a really good center for him last year. I think this team has like 12-5 potential, honestly, but it's dependent on, Tyron Smith. He was banged up last year. Is he going to be healthy? He's obviously your best offensive lineman over there. I think they did a great job in the offseason. Between that, Mike Williams, I'm really sad about Bryce Huff. He blew up. I think he did get a deal done with Hassan Reddick. I won't even remember Bryce Huff.
Guy we haven't even brought up yet is Breece Hall. He was that one dude on that offense that exploded last season, and he was fun to watch. He ended up finishing as the 8th graded back, And I know he's going way up there in fantasy drafts right now. Everybody's anticipating a lot of Breece Hall work. You don't have Dalvin Cook over his shoulder anymore. He's fully healthy. And then he's got Aaron Rodgers, cross your fingers, and among many other weapons on that offense. So I'm excited to see what Breece Hall does if Rodgers stays healthy. Garrett Wilson is phenomenal. I'm an Ohio State guy, so I've always loved Garrett Wilson. I expect him and Aaron Rodgers to light it up. I really do. Mike Williams definitely is a concern staying healthy. Xavier Gibson, possibly the third receiver. And then you got Alan Lazard back there in the receiving corps. And I know they liked Jason Brownlee a lot last year as well. Who's going to be that third option that steps up after Garrett Wilson? And then, God forbid, Mike Williams goes down. Who could be that second guy?
I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to make it be Alan Lazard. He's had a pretty good camp. I love Xavier Gibson, man. Obviously, started with that return in Buffalo, or not in Buffalo. I'm sorry, against Buffalo, Week 1 last year, when he returned it to win the game. Dude's electric in the open field. I like Xavier Gibson as that number 3 guy. Alan Lazard's another big target you can throw in when you get in the red zone. But I personally like Xavier Gibson. I think he's got a lot of big play potential, a lot of yards after catch potential there. I think Lazard has just dropped a lot of. I think he led the league in drop passes last year. He was up there. So Xavier Gibson for me, man, it's Duke can just. He's a small guy, but I like him in the slot. I think he's going to run by a lot of people. Again, with you and you mentioned how good Garrett Wilson is. The dude's a stud. If Mike Williams can stay healthy, be that big target, better receiver, I think that's going to be a great compliment to Garrett Wilson too.
Like I said, there's not much to question when just looking at this team on paper right now. But another thing to bring up, I don't know how you feel, Pete. I'm not a huge fan of this coaching staff. I know Aaron Rodgers has the relationship with Nate Hackett that he does. I don't think Nate Hackett is really shown to be that great of a coordinator outside of Aaron Rodgers just playing like an MVP out there from their time in Green Bay together. Robert Saleh, he's done some questionable things, although I think he's a great defensive coach. I don't want to take that away from him because he's got that defense playing at all times, and that's his job is to get that defense going, and he's done that. So I want to be fair to Robert Saleh, but some other things and how he's handled it as a head coach have been questionable over the years. Are you concerned at all with this coaching staff? Is this indeed like a make or break year for Robert Saleh, head coach?
I think it is. Even if they only just sneak in the playoffs and lose first round, I think he's done. If they don't make the playoffs, he's definitely done. I think Aaron Rodgers is saving Hackett's job, like you said, they're buddies. But I absolutely think it is. The Jets have this thing where they just hire defensive coordinators for their head coaching positions, and it only gets them so far. I mean, even when the Jets saw back-to-back AFC championships with Rex Ryan, never got done. The offense is always the problem. They relied on that defense, and that's what they're doing now to win games. No doubt he's done a great job on the defense side, but there's just, like you said, random. I can literally picture times running out, he's not calling timeouts, and everyone's scratching their head but him. Just dumb stuff that he does. Then Nate Hackett, Zach Wilson's not that talented of a quarterback, but I think he called one good game last year. It was when the Jets almost beat the Chiefs, but they didn't. So like I said, I don't even think he'd be here this year if Aaron Rodgers wasn't their quarterback. If their season goes down the tubes for whatever reason, I think they're both gone in the offseason.
It's just crazy to think about the amount of games that team was in last season with like the quarterback play that they had, but they just kept staying in these games with some of these teams. And they even had some great wins on that schedule as well. And it's like, how did this even happen for them to get to 7-10? And that just shows like how great that defense really is. Right now, their win-loss sitting at 10.5. They're plus 165 to win the division right now, plus 1,900 Super Bowl odds. I know there's a ton of pressure right now for the Jets. It just feels like last year all over again. And I know last year was a big letdown, but what are some honest, like, what are true expectations of this team? Like, do you expect this team to be a Super Bowl contender and take like that leap now that they have Aaron Rodgers and win this division? Like, is it the Jets division to lose right now?
I think every day someone asks me this, I have a different answer. I truly think it's Miami's division to lose still. But this ain't gonna make sense. But I think it's Miami's division to lose. But I truly think the Jets are a more complete team because of how good their defense is. Brees Hall's phenomenal. I think they match up everywhere pretty well. But the Jets obviously take the cake on defense against the Dolphins. That being said, like I said before, I think it's a letdown if they don't if they don't make the division round. I think it's a letdown. They've done absolutely everything, improved everywhere that they possibly could. Their offensive line was in dire need, got it done. Picked up Mike Williams. Like you said, they lost Bryce Huff and Jordan Whitehead. I still love their defense. Not much has changed. I think they win at least 10 games. I would say, they're an 11-6 team this year. I think I talked to so many people and they're like 9-8, 10-7. Again, they started 4 different quarterbacks last year and they won 7 games. One of those guys is Zach Wilson, who's nothing more than a backup. Trevor Siemian, borderline practice squad. Tim Boyle, who? These guys won them 7 games. Their defense won them 7 games, but you get my point. If they can't win at least 10 or 11 games compared to that team last year, winning them 7 games, then I think it's just a total. I'd be at a total loss for words. I don't even know what to say thinking about it right now.
You fear Miami more than you fear Buffalo, then?
It might be a hot take, man, but I do. I think all 3 of them are going to make the playoffs. Honestly,
Okay.
Whatever. I know the AFC is pretty stacked, but I see them all going at least like 10-7. I could see Buffalo slipping to 9-8. I don't know, man. Josh Allen's a dog. He's going to win them a lot of games by himself.
Right.
I have no hate against Buffalo. I think Josh Allen's great, but they got great tight ends. But they lost a lot on defense, man. They lost Stephon Diggs, who's, people say that's a blessing that they lost him, but dude's still a phenomenal talent.
For sure.
There's nowhere getting around that. Sometimes you put up with guys like that just for their talent.
Wouldn't that be something after, 20 some odd years, first year, Bill Belichick out of New England, all 3 AFC teams getting the playoffs, and New England sitting in last place, the only team not to make the playoffs? That would be certainly interesting. And I'm sure a lot of AFC East fans would appreciate that, not named Patriots.
Yeah, man. You have no idea how good it is to see him gone, man.
I can imagine.
I hope the Patriots burn for like 30 years. I'm not playing. Well, what's the draw there now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. They've just done it the whole time I've even been a fan of football.
Yep.
And for some reason,
pure domination.
Some reason I chose the Jets. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that.
Well, brother, I am crossing my fingers for you, praying that Aaron Rodgers is there all season, healthy, throwing dimes to Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall's running all over defenses, because with that defense, this team is going to be very scary. But Pete, it's been a blessing talking to you. Some New York Jets. Appreciate you coming on. We'll have to talk again.
Appreciate you, man. It was great having a lot of fun doing this. So I'll come back anytime you want.
Hell yeah. Have a good night, brother.
All right, man. You too. We'll see you.
When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Try to stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour. When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Try to stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a